Hello, wonderful beings. Last week I asked you, what are the most helpful boundaries that you have set with family members? And I've asked this group, I've asked other groups and communities that I'm a part of as it relates to relationships, which is something I'm particularly interested in. I have been a life coach for almost 10 years now, and I focus on improving the relationship with others as well as with oneself. My name is Diane of Artemis Healing Relationships. So boundaries. What is a boundary? A boundary is simply a reflection of what's going on inside of you. And it's establishing a boundary is about expressing in a kind way what is acceptable to you and what is not. And it's not about rules or things you should do or should not be doing. It's about having a boundary that is based on empathy, understanding of oneself, one's own values, and also on respect. So there is this idea of, hey, I'm going to respect my own boundaries and I'm going to respect your boundaries. And for this to be established, ideally it comes in the form of a dialogue, of an exchange that is done with an open mind and an open heart. So here I'm not talking about setting healthy boundaries with a toddler or disciplining or things like that. But the principles about boundaries coming from a place of compassion and empathy and respect, these principles are there. That means there is no judgment involved in this. There is no punitive action, or there is no scolding, in this whole process. But having and setting some healthy boundaries to protect your own values and self-esteem and what you truly believe in, that is important. And you would do the same for the other one. So we're talking about boundaries set out of love, if you will, and self-respect and mutual respect. So I want to share with you some stories, from people who have expressed some of these healthy boundaries that they have created with some family members. One of them is very it's a very beautiful story, and it comes from Dawn. Dawn is an art therapist. She's also a nurse, and she explained that growing up, her mother used to beat her up. So usually with physical abuse, there is usually also some emotional, mental abuse. She probably went through that too. When Dawn was about 15 years old, she retaliated and she slapped her mother back big time. So the beating stopped because the mother understood, okay, Dawn has reached her limit. But still, over the years, Dawn was pretty obedient and fearful of her mother, and rightfully so, with the history that they've had. And so in her 20s, Dawn mentioned that she'd been with her mother, and her mother asked her to fetch something in a different room and to bring it back. So it was more of a demand than a kind request, as you may imagine. And Dawn had read a book about how to become more assertive. And this book told her, or suggested, that she tries to say no without explanation, without justification. And so Dawn took a lot of courage, and when her mother told her, go fetch me this, Dawn said no. Silence. She waited for the tornado to come back her way, and she expected some not very enjoyable consequences of this. But it turns out that her mother was flabbergasted. And not only that, the dad who had witnessed this scene said, beautiful. Like he was absolutely approving of his daughter's firm, strong no, without justification. And that was a turning point for Dawn in her life, and especially in her relationship with her mother, because now she had set a strong boundary for what was acceptable for her. And she made this decision that she was not going to be a slave to her mother, and that she would be, despite the fear of her mother, because the fear was definitely there, she said no and she stood her ground. That is brave. That is extremely brave. So that's a beautiful example of when setting a healthy boundary is in alignment with your sense of self, with your understanding that you need to respect yourself as well as the other, of course. And it's come out, in this case, it has come out of courage. So well done, Dawn, for doing that. It's amazing, and it's changed her life ever since. So our boundaries, the healthy boundaries, are not necessarily as strong as this. But in cases of one person in your life having a big influence on you and stirring you, controlling or being overwhelmingly, I'm sorry about that, strong and sometimes disempowering, you may have to enforce a strong no. Beautiful. And in most cases, our healthy boundaries have to do with smaller limits, like what Carly and Susie mentioned about, hey, ask me first. If you want to come over to my house, or if you want to invite friends over, please ask me. This is simple. This is based on respect, and it is not something offensive in any way. So by all means, use this. I want to share another story here. This one is from Robert. And Robert grew up in this generation where children needed to be seen but not heard. And do what I say, don't ask questions. And this was a very authoritarian upbringing he had. And so growing up was very challenging for him to find his own voice, for him to have some strong self-esteem, and to build good relationships in his life in general. Like, how do you do that when you haven't been taught to? And so he realized that he needed to have some strong models, and it took him years to find some good, reliable, strong models, people who would show him how to be the person he wanted to be and how to treat others right as well. And something that he learned from these role models is that to have a strong value system. And his values grew to be based on honesty and fairness and being approachable and being open to hearing people out and understand their point of view. So having an open mind. And this is what helped him to then create the kind of healthy boundaries in his relationships, because he had learned over many, many years to create a value system that would support that. And so that's a beautiful story, and thank you so much, Robert, for sharing it with us too. Another beautiful story here, it comes from Morgan. Morgan has a sister. I think they're 2 years apart, and they're both adults, and they're very different. Her sister is a woman of the world, loves the city, and loves fashion and beauty, aesthetics in general. She's also rebellious, a strong force of life. And Morgan is very different. She's more of a nature lover, and she cares not about all these things, and she prefers to follow the rules and the laws in general. So she's a little bit she's less expensive, if you will. And Morgan realizes that. But yet she's had this longing forever to have a very close relationship with her sister. To think about each other, to give each other's gifts, to be each other's best friends, like in the movies. And this is where Morgan got a lot of her expectations about sisterly relationships. She realized that a lot of it she'd learned from watching movies and TV series and from the media, from the ads. And so it created this expectation of the ideal sisterly relationship, one whereby you're best friends and you have each other's backs and you are in each other's lives at all times. You are each other's best confidants. And she was getting so frustrated that her relationship reality with her sister was nothing at all like that. And after a strong disagreement they had together, she was so tired and she told her sister, "I've had enough. I have had enough of wanting you and I and us to be something that we're not." And so it was an awakening moment for her, because she realized that her expectations had set her up for failure in this relationship. And she decided, "I'm not going to do this anymore. Do you agree, sister?" The sister agreed that they're going to create their own new normal, their own sisterly dynamic. And even if that meant that they would see each other just once or twice per year, at least then when they would meet and when they would be together, they would be themselves and be able to enjoy each other's company without expecting the other one to behave in a certain way or to do certain things. So the boundary here sometimes is self-imposed and is not very helpful if it's based on unrealistic expectations. And you have an unrealistic expectation if you keep on bumping into the same problem over and over again, and it's creating a lot of pain for you because you're holding on to a wish for the other person to be something that they're not in the present. That's very painful. That is not to say that having the hope and desire and dream that this person would change is a stupid idea. Not at all. Change is possible in the other person. But first we have to look at oneself. And sometimes our own expectations are blocking the flow of connection with the other one. We are actually not seeing and being with this person if we want them to match an image that we have in our mind, and they just keep on failing us because they're not matching this image. It's really on us. So being in the present and letting go of some unrealistic, unhelpful expectations where differences are not going to go away. You've known this for years. You just need to embrace it and be okay with it. So beautiful story from Morgan. Thank you, Morgan, for sharing. Another lady is talking here about no writing. She says that when she sets some boundaries with people, she never does it in writing. It's always talking with a person, either face to face or over the phone. I think that's very helpful most of the time. So you might consider this, and instead of sending something via text message or on Messenger or WhatsApp or whatever, consider switching to the good old, hey, let's have a talk about this. I've had something on my mind. When is a good time for us to talk about it? Or picking up the phone is a better option. That being said, in some cases, it's really hard to get your point across because the other person would keep on talking over you or not listen. And that has been my personal experience with one of my family members whom I love very much. He is here to stay, but the relationship was very one-sided. In a sense that this person would talk and I would listen, which is fine because I'm a good listener. But after a little while, you're like, I'd like a little bit of give and take. So sometimes explaining to a very talkative person, somebody who cuts you off or doesn't know how to listen, is very challenging. So in my particular case, I have sent an email, short and brave, explaining this way that we communicate no longer satisfies me, and I'm hoping we'll find a solution. For now, I'm going to take a little breather, and we're not going to talk for a while because I'm hoping for more of a give and take relationship. And I'm not asking for equity. I'm not asking for 50-50. But basically, I was asking to be heard. And that's a very basic human being, human need, if you will, to be heard and seen. And beautifully enough, this person last time heard me, like mulled over it. And last time we spoke over the phone, consciously tried to ask me questions and tried to listen to me and remembered. And I could tell he was trying so hard to meet my need. And that's because I didn't blame him. I didn't judge him. I was just going back to me and my values and say, hey, I would love for this relationship to be a little bit more two ways, and I would love to be heard a little bit more. And that's what happened. So I hope this was helpful to you, and feel free to comment about your personal boundaries, and if there's anything else that you would like to know about it. Contact me directly either on artemishealingrelationships.com or directly in the comment of this Facebook group. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.